You Booked It, episode 22. Hey, entertainers and performers of the world. I'm your host, Dane Reese, and welcome to You Booked It, where I chat with inspiring entertainers 7 days a week. By digging into their journey, we're going to discover everything you need to do to be a successful entertainer. You know, because training usually skips that part about how to actually make your skills work for you in the real world. Fellow entertainers, my drive here at You Booked It is to share the inspiring and incredible journeys of successful entertainers. We are here to support your journey. So go to youbookeditpodcast.com and join the You Booked It email community where we dig deep into truly actionable things you can be doing right now to help you book that next audition, submission, or gig. If you enjoy this free podcast, please show your support and search for You Booked It on Apple Podcast or your favorite podcast app where you can subscribe so you don't miss an episode, leave a rating and review. And to show our appreciation for your, fingers crossed, 5-star rating and review, I will give you a shout out on an upcoming episode. And now, let's do this. All right, let's get started. I am excited to introduce my guest today, Rachel Bertone. Are you ready for this, Rachel?
I sure am.
Great. Rachel is an award-winning director slash choreographer and a professor of theater and dance. She has staged over 50 musicals in the Boston theater scene alone, including Cabaret, which won an Ernie Award for Best Direction, Choreography, and Best Musical. Carousel, which also won an Ernie Award for Best Choreography. In the Heights, which won an Ernie Award for Best Musical. The Wild Party, which won an Ernie Award for Best Musical as well. Gypsy, Kiss of the Spider Woman, Billy Elliot, Little Shop of Horrors, Showboat, Hair, Barnum, West Side Story, and Guys and Dolls. Rachel is passionate about education, enriching the lives of young performers, and amplifying female-identifying voices. She has taught at numerous prestigious institutions, including the Boston Conservatory at Berkeley, the American Repertory Theater Institute at Harvard University, Emerson College, and Long Island University Post. She privately coaches performers both in New York City, where she's currently residing, and Boston. She proudly holds a BFA from the Boston Conservatory. Rachel, that is a quick intro of who you are and what you've done, but why don't you tell us a little bit more about yourself, fill in the gaps, if you will, about who you are, and a little bit more about what you do as a professional in the entertainment industry.
For sure, Dane. First of all, thank you so much for having me today.
My pleasure.
Thank you. I am originally from Malden, Massachusetts, which is just outside Boston, Mass. I did, however, just move to New York, Washington Heights to be exact, a few months ago. I moved to further pursue and expand my directorial and choreographic career and create new artistic collaborations here. I am now teaching musical theater at Long Island University Post, as you mentioned, and continuing to run my own business, which I've had for a number of years now. And that involves a variety of musical theater classes, workshops that I teach on a daily basis. Currently, it's all online due to COVID-19, but I still teach and offer various classes every single day. So waiting for our industry to open back up again and hopefully be ready to launch right back in when we take off.
All right, let's move to this next section here. And Rachel, I am a sucker for a good quote. What is your favorite quote you'd like to share with our listeners?
I have two. Can I share two or just one? You're making me choose.
Absolutely. Go ahead, share two.
Okay. So my first one is a personal mantra that's inspired by Brené Brown, which is stand in your own strength. And my other one is from The Alchemist, written by Paulo Coelho, which is...
Love that book.
Oh, so good. I love all of his books. It says, when you want something, all the universe conspires in helping you to achieve it.
I love it. I love both of those quotes so much. Could you expand a little bit about how you've applied both of those to your daily life and your career?
Sure, of course. So, in regards to standing in your own strength, for me personally, it's taken me many years to learn, as many artists do, your own sense of self worth and why I am deserving of all my dreams and aspirations. And it took
Yeah.
me a number, yeah, and it took me a number of years as a female identifying director working in a profession primarily run by older white cis males to learn how to stand in my own strength and stand behind the work and beliefs that I had every right to be proud of. So in recent years, I've become a big advocate, as you mentioned in the intro, for young female identifying artists because I want to help them understand what it's like to be a strong, empowered, kick-ass woman in this industry and that their voices matter.
Yes.
So and I have a friend of mine just made me a little embroidered little piece of art that says that I have on my bookshelf right now, which I love. And as for the Paulo Coelho quote, I am a big law of attraction believer. So for those who don't know, law of attraction is just simply the ability to attract and manifest the positive things you want into your life. And I've been practicing this positive psychology for probably since college. So definitely over a decade now. And I've been reading his books for as long. And he's a big believer in that. And in The Alchemist, he says this quote, and I just firmly believe that the universe is always saying yes. And you simply need to be, you know, vibrating at that like high energy, positive energy level to receive it. And so I'm a big manifester and believer in that.
I love that. Well, let's move to this next section. And Rachel, of
Sure.
course, you are an entertainer. I am an entertainer. And I think that you'd agree that this industry is one of the most subjective, brutally honest, personally emotional industries either of us know about or have experienced. And you know as well as I that in order to create and to have a successful career in this industry, like you're having now, takes a lot of dedication and hard work. And while, of course, there is an outrageous amount of fun working on projects and shows and directing and choreographing, we also have our fair share of obstacles, the challenges, the failures that we are going to inevitably experience, and we're going to have to move forward through if you want to continue doing this professionally. So tell us, what is one key challenge, obstacle, or failure you've experienced through your career, and how did you come out the other side better because of it?
It's a great question. Um, I think one big challenge I have faced is learning how to tactfully and professionally stand up for myself and my team members when producers or artistic directors have differing opinions than my own. You definitely have to learn which battles to pick as a director. And usually I'm pretty good at making those decisions. When I was younger, it was definitely scarier to confront or different opinion from a producer who is often older, white, cis male. We are taught to yes and everything, particularly in theater and in the arts, and be grateful for every opportunity we receive as artists. But this doesn't always serve us. So I learned a lot about my sense of integrity from these experiences. When actors or designers were being treated poorly or unfairly in situations, I knew that I was one of the only people who could stand up for them. And I always say this, I use my position of influence. And I like to say position of influence and not power. So I use my position of influence to be their voice and defend them because they too are afraid of potentially getting a reputation of being, quote, too difficult to work with, you know? So it hasn't always ended perfectly, but at the end of the day, I've never regretted any of those decisions. I am a very open-minded and understanding person. So if I'm going to challenge or defend someone, I feel very strongly about those issues and believe that something needs to be done or changed. So from those experiences, I also learned that I wanted to champion artists. Once again, usually younger artists, and make sure they know that there's a space at the table for them and a space for them to be seen and heard.
I love that. I love that you're such an advocate for the artist because when you get into creating a show, into production, and you're on that side of the table,
Mm,
there are there are so many aspects that come into it besides just creating just the art of it, right? There's the logistics
absolutely.
of actually creating it and the finances, the business side of the show business. And it's hard to make those decisions and to be someone who can span both of those worlds is so valuable and important to the people you're working with, but also to the producers that are having you on this project. And I can only imagine that while you have some tense moments, I'm sure, throughout your career, as you kind of step into your own self, you also are able to develop those relationships with those producers and you find the people that are great to work with. And that ultimately, because you're such an advocate for the artist, see that you are here for the betterment of the entire production from top to bottom, and that maybe that opens up even more trust and a better relationship moving forward.
Absolutely. I firmly believe in process over product. I strive to create a great product for obviously the theater, but day one as a director, those actors need your actors, your designers, they need to know that you have their back. And
Yeah,
creating that level of trust is crucial to have a successful and positive and safe process and environment for everyone. So I learned that from being on the other side of the table when I was performing, and maybe being in slightly toxic environments where I didn't have that chance to speak my voice. So I always swore I was, when I would be directing, as I was transitioning into directing, I always said, I will never make an actor feel that way.
yeah, it is. It's so important because when you are directing a group of people and you're directing the artists, it you really are asking them to give so much emotionally, and that's how great productions are created. So you're already putting artists in a hyper vulnerable position doing the work to create whatever it is that you're creating, and to be aware of that is so important.
Absolutely. And being a Brene Brown sucker again, there's so much strength in vulnerability, and artists are putting themselves on the line every single day. They're putting that vulnerability on the line. And as a director, you need to be able to say, I got your back. I'm going to
Yeah,
hold a place of safety for you so that you can go to those deepest depths, and I have you. So
absolutely, and that's where the
absolutely.
wonderful work happens.
Yeah, it does.
Great. Well, let's move on to a time that I like to call your spotlight moment. That one moment in time that you realized, yes, I am going to be part of this entertainment industry for a living. Or maybe it was, yes, this is what I need to be doing in this industry. Tell us about that.
Sure. Yes, it was in 2012. I wasn't directing yet, but I had just choreographed my big first musical, which was West Side Story, which is my favorite musical of all time, actually. And
Yeah.
although it was greatly inspired by Jerome Robbins' original choreography, and I mean, I believe you can't take Robbins out of West Side Story, in my opinion, I was able to do my own choreography for this particular production. Up until up until that point, I was choreographing for shows that mostly needed musical staging, or I was restaging original choreography. Interestingly enough, I always thought I would just restage other people's choreography because I didn't think I had a special voice or style at the time that people would want to see or experience. I when I went to school at the Boston Conservatory, I took a choreography class, and I didn't think anyone thought my work was any good, actually. And I walked away thinking, well, maybe I'm not meant to be a choreographer.
Right.
But all of this got challenged. All of this got thrown out the window after I choreographed this entire production of West Side, and I realized that was my moment. I realized, wow, I can tell stories through the power of movement and dance. And that was so exhilarating and empowering for me. I also learned at that time that I could speak to actors and communicate action and storytelling. And it was actually after that show that the theater saw my potential as a director and asked me to direct and choreograph my very first musical the next year. So it
That's a
was
great
that
story.
it was that moment. Yeah, West Side Story, man.
Yeah, and what a great experience that just transitioned you. It just all those different circumstances that just highlighted really what gives you the most fulfillment. That's fantastic.
Yes, absolutely.
Well, let's piggyback on that and let's talk about your number one booked it moment. Walk us through that entire day. What was going on in your life and what about that moment makes it your favorite booked it moment?
I love this. So I haven't auditioned for a show in a very long time because I haven't performed since 2013. I've been very lucky that I've booked most of my directorial jobs through referrals. So those stories didn't seem as interesting to tell today. So I will tell this story about booking a job with Disney as a choreographer. So just to give you some history with this, I auditioned for Disney as a performer right after college and booked the job. But I actually didn't accept it for numerous reasons. As positive and amazing as everyone is at Disney, they're truly amazing. I knew in my gut that I was supposed to take another job that I had been offered, and it was performing in 3 musicals at Regal Music Theater in Boston. Coincidentally, I continued working there for 10 more years, eventually directing and choreographing some of my biggest musicals to date. And
Wow.
yeah, and so I know now that if I hadn't taken that job, if I had taken that job with Disney, I may not be where I am today as a director and choreographer. So fast forward to last summer, and I learned that they were looking for a choreographer who maintains all the choreography for various shows. It sounded very up my alley, so I applied, and the process began. So I made it past the application round. So the next step was recording myself dancing, which I hadn't done in so long because I haven't been performing. But because I had a different view on auditioning now as a director, I actually had fun with it. And I then made it to the next round, and I was asked to fly to Disney World to audition in person. However, the audition was scheduled to be the day before I was supposed to start rehearsals for Little Shop of Horrors that I was directing. So I was considering not going. Another side note is that this was when I was planning to move to New York, which was right after Little Shop would open. So another reason to perhaps not go. But as always, I say yes and I went to Florida and I did the audition. And to my surprise, I had a blast. I felt like I nailed every aspect of the audition. And I had so much confidence in myself because I was actually finding the joy. I was having fun. I wasn't worrying if I would get the job or not. And as a director, I knew how the minds were working behind the table. it was it was like I knew all the answers to the test.
Yeah.
So I did great at the audition, and then I did great at the interview portion, and then I literally hopped on the plane and went back to Boston. I was there for less than 48 hours. A few weeks later, I got the job. And I was really torn because Disney's such an amazing company, et cetera, et cetera. But crazy enough, I knew in my gut again, over 10 years later, that to I needed to not take the job, and I needed to move to New York and pursue my goals. So I respectfully declined, and I moved to New York. And now I joke that maybe in 10 years or so, like I did, back in college, that hopefully I'll see why exactly I moved to New York and I didn't accept that Disney job again. So it kind of came full circle. So really fascinating experience audition to be in the audition room again and to be on the other side, but to actually have fun doing it. It was just such a different perspective. And I think that's why I did well.
Absolutely. And I love that whole story and the whole, like you said, full circle and how you ultimately chose not to take the job, even though it was a
Mm.
fantastic experience. It would have been a fantastic job to have, but I love
Mm-hmm.
that you followed your your gut and you're like, this is what I need to be doing, not this. And
Yeah.
that's okay to say that and admit that to yourself. You don't just have to follow, the shiny object. Uh,
Yes.
and I love that you talked about how you had fun and you were relaxed, how you almost knew the answers to the questions. And it's I love that you said that because it's something that has been coming up across a lot of interviews, not all of them, but when people talk about that booked it moment, they pretty much all have the same thing in common, that they were relaxed. They weren't desperate. They were happy to be there. Everything was light. And I think there's so much to learn from that. And it's not something you can necessarily fabricate, but knowing that this is certainly turning into a trend of how people are feeling and going into a room and then coming out with a job.
Yes. Absolutely. I'm such a big advocate. Maybe that's not the right word, but I preach all the time, find the joy. Find the joy. Don't let fear dictate your choices. I always say, find the joy instead.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
Sometimes easier said than done, but
Amen.
you if you know if you know that that's where you should try to be, try to get yourself to that headspace. And that's what it's all about. At the end of the day, we're singing, acting, and dancing. We're not doing any crazy stuff. It's super important and it needs to be done, but
It's not brain
it's
surgery.
inherently fun and entertaining. We don't have to go
Yes.
crazy with it.
Oh, I totally agree, Zane.
Yeah. Singing, acting, and dancing. It's a fun thing.
It's a fun thing.
So, yeah. Well, let's take a moment to talk about the present. What projects are you working on now? What are you looking forward to? And of course, this is a weird time with this global pandemic. How do you
Mm,
see the entertainment industry moving forward in the next couple of years?
definitely. So I had a number of shows that I was supposed to direct and choreograph this summer, including Evita and The King and I. So hopefully those will be in the seasons of those theaters next year. But I, along with so many of my colleagues, it's a time that we just have to trust and you know accept what our current situations are in terms of our artistic endeavors. But to stay creatively active, I am currently collaborating with some very talented and friends of mine. I can't say what they are now, but stay
Fair
tuned,
enough.
hopefully. um, but I've been having, in terms of where the industry is going, I've been having a lot of conversations about this with friends. And I think we're going to see, in terms of storytelling, I think we're going to see a range of stories coming forward. I think we're going to see some political, we're going to see some satirical for sure. But I know that all of them will be fueled with passion. And many will have, I think, universal messages. Artists are just so hungry right now to create more than ever and longing to be in a room with each other, with other creative minds. So I think we've learned a lot about how to use technology right now to use stories. And I think technology will come with us, right? Like, we knew we were heading in this technological direction anyways,
All right.
but now we were forced to accept it. But I've learned that even though we'll use technology, I think, to support storytelling in different ways, I think I've also learned that art is truly a human connection, and that technology alone will not suffice. Our medium, it's not a sports event. It's not a movie. It's not a film. It's
Yeah,
supposed
it's
to
not
be
even Netflix.
experienced live. It's not even Netflix. And that's a whole nother beautiful art form, right? And that's amazing.
Yeah,
But theater is designed to be live. And I think right now we have to embrace we do have to embrace technology and see how we can be creative with it. I love all my friends creating videos, and um, I think that's beautiful right now. We need it. But going forward, I think we're going to get back to the human connection. And I think eventually human touch is going to be so powerful when we see that on stage again.
absolutely. And I hope so much that that's exactly what happens. I'm
Mm,
hopeful.
I am too.
Well, let's move on to one of my favorite sections in the interview. I call it the Grease Lightning round.
Woo!
I am going to ask you a handful of questions. I want you to answer them as quickly and concisely as possible, one after another. Are you ready?
Okay, yes.
All right. First question. What was the one thing holding you back from committing to a career in the entertainment industry?
Not feeling like I had a voice in the room.
Second question. What is the best piece of advice you have ever received?
Before you walk into a room, take whatever stressful, negative feelings you may be experiencing and put them into a box. Tie a beautiful ribbon around it, leave it outside the door. It will be waiting for you if you want to pick it up and unwrap it afterwards. But for now, there's nothing you can do about those feelings, and they aren't benefiting anyone else in the room, especially yourself.
I think that is incredibly sound advice for anybody listening, new or old in the industry.
Mm.
And the third question. What is something that is working for you now? Or if you'd like to go pre COVID, what was working for you before our industry went on pause?
My self-care routine.
Yes,
And journaling, especially journaling. It's what I do every morning before I begin my work. I take out my journal and I write, and it gives me clarity and peace of mind during these very
I
challenging
love that.
times.
And the fourth question. What is the best resource, whether it's a book, a movie, a YouTube video, maybe it's a podcast, maybe it's a piece of technology that you have found is helping your career right now?
The Artist's Way by Julia Cameron. I swear by
Great.
it.
Love it. And the fifth question. If you had to start your career from scratch, but still had all the knowledge and experience you've collected from your career in this industry, what would you do or not do? Would you do anything differently or would you keep it the same?
I would not listen to the noise in my head.
Absolutely. And the last question. What is the golden nugget knowledge drop you have learned from your successful career in this industry that you'd like to leave with our listeners?
This is a saying a former teacher of mine said to me, if not now, when? If I expanded upon that just a smidgen, I would just say that I always take this into the room when I teach and when I direct and whenever I'm doubting myself and I say, why would they want me? Will I even get a shot at this job? Or maybe when I'm feeling unmotivated, I just have to say, if not now, when? When am I going to do this? After someone else gets the job? No, I need to do it now, right now.
Absolutely. There's so much to be said about living and acting in the now. It's again one of those things that's can be a bit easier said than done, but
Definitely.
it is so true. And I personally can account most of my successes to just saying we're doing this because you have to,
Mm-hmm.
because your alternative is not booking it or not even being considered. You have to put yourself out there.
Absolutely. Or
Perfect.
someone else is just gonna step right in front of you.
Exactly. If you're auditioning for a show, for instance, or any kind of job, that exists. They're going to use it. Someone's going to be in that position, right? So
Yes, exactly.
why not you?
Why not you? Exactly.
Right. Well, let's wrap up this interview. And that means it is time for you to give yourself a plug. Where can
What?
we find you? How do our listeners connect with you? Is there anything you'd like to promote?
Sure. Well, thank you. Anyone can find me on Facebook, Rachel Bertone. I have my group in which I actually run most of my business off of is called Musical Theater with Rachel Bertone, and it's a public group, so you can find it. That's where I post all my classes and workshops that range from dance classes, choreography workshops, directing workshops, etc. It's the whole gamut. And then I do also coach privately. So if anyone's interested in that, they can reach out to me. My website is rachelbertone.com. So my email contact is there if you wish to connect further. So happy to meet anyone who wants to join the fun.
Love it. Well, Rachel, thank you so much for joining me today. It has been wonderful to have you.
Oh, thank you so much, Dane. It's my pleasure.
Thank you so much for joining us today. My one call to action for you is to go to youbookeditpodcast.com and join our free email community, where we dig deep into a continually growing resource of truly actionable things you can be doing right now to help you advance your entertainment career. Don't miss an episode. We have a new guest 7 days a week. Search for You Booked It on Apple Podcast or your favorite podcast app and subscribe today. All the best to you. We'll see you tomorrow.